Fossil, and we're going to be discussing The Deep Ones with the cast and creatives of that film. Before we begin, why don't we go around the proverbial virtual table, have everybody introduce themselves, and Chad, let's go ahead and start with you.
Hi, I'm Chad Ferrin, writer, director, producer of The Deep Ones, and thanks for tuning in. It's great.
Hi, I'm Robert Miano. I'm in Santa Monica, California, and I play Russell. I play Russell in the Deep Ones.
Hi, I'm Silvia Spross, and I'm in Santa Monica too. And I forgot my character name. How terrible is that?
Ingrid.
What's my character
name? Ingrid.
Ingrid Crowder. I'm sorry. Nice to have. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And last but certainly not least.
Hi, I'm Kelli Maroney. I'm here in Hollywood, California. Thank you so much for having me. Good to see you.
And I believe we're going to have Richard Band joining us here in a moment. But while we wait for him to make his mysterious late hour appearance, let's go ahead and dive into things. Chad, first of all, congratulations on getting this wrapped up right before the world actually ended. There seems to be something very appropriate in getting an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation into the end before we all started experiencing our own real-life cosmic horror story. This is probably the writer in me that I always feel the compulsion to begin with this, but where did the story for this come from?
The story really kind of came up from the location. You know, Gina had this beach house, and Robert introduced me to Gina. We're going to do another project. That project fell through. She said, "Hey, I've got this beach house. Do you want to shoot a low-budget film here?" I said, "Yeah, sure. What do you got in mind?" She wanted to do a slasher. I said, "Forget a slasher. I'm not interested." And she said, "Well, come up with whatever you want." So, based on the location and everything, I started thinking I want to do a cult film. Always wanted to, and with the ocean right there in the house, I'm like H.P. Lovecraft. So it kind of all spurred from the location, and then I started diving into Lovecraft's work again because I hadn't read his stuff since I was a kid, and really just got energized by his writings, especially Call of Cthulhu and Shadow over Innsmouth, and just the idea of that meshed with Rosemary's Baby, and everything just kind of came together very, very quickly.
And you really tapped into something with that. H.P. Lovecraft is sort of having this this renaissance right now. What do you think it is about his writing that has really taken off with the contemporary imagination?
I think it's really the world he creates, and just kind of an alternate reality that people want to get into more so than the reality we're looking at, especially right now with the world melting around us. So I think it's just kind of an escape, and his writing and his world and his monsters and his things kind of are far worse than what we're in. So I think it's something to kind of bridge the gap of society, and something that's just timeless, really. I mean, it's amazing. You read that stuff and it's almost 100 years old, and it's just like beyond imagination that someone wrote this so far ago. And it's really amazing how it works with a contemporary audience, and it's really timeless. It's hard to understand why it's so effective, but it really is.
Something that stood out to me about the way that the film is directed and the way that all of the actors and actresses perform on screen is that there's this almost sort of kind of Robert Altman sensibility about it. I almost got the impression that the film was kind of being improvised to a degree, and that we were really seeing the way that these people interacted. Tell us about your approach to directing the material that you wrote.
Well, I'm very organic about things. So it's kind of like a script's written, but I'm very open to the actors' improv or suggestions on set or anything like that. I don't go in with any preconceived notion of how it has to be. There's certain shots I want to get, and I try to get those. But if you get in like, say, the kitchen, for example, it's too small or it's too big for a camera to get what you want. So you have to be, especially when you've got to do 10 pages that day and you've got 4 hours left, and you're like, okay, let's trim this down to whatever. And if the lines aren't working as written, I let the actors improvise that. If, like the scene when they're at the dinner table and they leave, that wasn't working at all. So when you mentioned Altman, that was one of the things I was yelling, Altman, Altman, overlap the lines, move this. And that kind of energy and on the fly really just helped drastically about getting not only a better performance, but a sense of realism, like you said, with, you know, the Altman idea. So I think it's just being, for me, it's being flexible of time and the performances and just the energy that's on the set that given day, because you never know what it might be. An actor might have, you know, just be in a bad mood. It might be giving something that's not there. But if you're willing to bend with what God gives you, in a sense, and not get hung up on not getting it exactly the way you might have envisioned it, you're much better off, especially on a very small budget and time constraints. So to me, it's just about being open to what's given to you and take those happy accidents as, hey, this is how it was meant to be. Let's go with it and have fun doing it.
Sylvia and Roberts, how is it like? What was it like working with Chad in this kind of production? How does it differ from a director who's maybe a little bit more hard and fast about what they want in a performance and what they want in a given scene?
Well, I think Chad knows what he wants, and we worked with him, or I have worked with him, I think, on about 4 movies, or maybe 5. I don't even know. So I love working with him. I kind of know what's coming, so there's not really. Actually, it feels more normal to work with Chad. And I love working with him. He does give you the certain type of freedom, and you can try stuff. And if he feels, nah, it doesn't work, he'll give you the adjustment, but he definitely gives you the freedom. And of course, it's low budget, so you only have about 3 takes, maybe. So you got to be on your feet. And I know that he lets you improvise a little bit. So I love working with him. It feels very normal, actually.
Kelli, how about you? How does working with Chad differ from other types of directors that you've worked with over the years?
Somebody asked me, you know, what Chad was like, and the first word that sprang to mind and always does is spontaneous. He's very present when he's there, and he'll just see something, and all of a sudden veer off what he was doing to get something else. And he doesn't get in there and tell actors what to do at all. So he's very he's a collaborator for sure, and very, very he's not running around trying to get his shots or trying to get something to happen a certain way. He knows what he wants, but if it's not working, he's very quick to shift into something else, and very open to see what happens, which is rare, especially when you're trying to make something for $5 and you have like 2 days to make it. It's very rare to find somebody that's chill like that, you know. Most of the time they're... So it's amazing. It's my second time working with him.
Was Exorcism at 17,000 feet, 20,000 feet?
60,000 feet.
60,000. That's why I'm not a math major.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, working with Chad, has always been a learning experience for me, because he gives me the opportunity to explore the character in the moment, using, you know, we use the script as our chord, as our soul, and have the freedom to live in that unknown, to live in the creative process and find what's not there, to illuminate what's not there, which I think is surprises. We're surprised by it, and if we're surprised by it, then the audience is surprised by it. So it's really in the moment. We're living in the moment, and so we're having an experience for the first time. And then, if we are, then the audience is too. That's why your comment about, you know, how the actors are acting. I think that's why it happens that way.
Going back to something from a moment ago, you know, Kelli, this is the second time you've worked with Chad. You've done Exorcism at 60,000 feet. You're kind of being able to experience this horror renaissance that's happening now, and you were also part of the horror renaissance of the 80s. How is making films like this different? How is it the same? Compare and contrast the experience of working during that sort of Night of the Comet era versus now.
Well, we worked on film was the major difference, and so this is much easier. You know, you're not gonna roll out in the middle of this scene and then they have to, you know, um, go get more film, and it's that was very expensive and very clunky. We didn't know any different, so that's fine. But now it's so much easier to film that they can go a lot fast. We thought it was fast if you did something in 3 weeks, and it was. It was at a you know, at a real fast clip. But now it's a long time because all that time was given to the technology that we had at the time. You know, we had no CGI. We had, like I said, film, which is a longer process to shoot with, 35 millimeter than what we have now, and that's the main thing I think. Um, yeah, that's the main thing because other than that, I think that people are just as crazy dedicated as they ever were. I loved coming back to this because I remember when I first started in the business, there was such a daring thing to it. It was, you know, rebellious. It's like, I'm, you know, what can I do that no one's ever done before, you know? And then I stopped seeing that as much, and I feel like it's back. But it's back in a different way this time because it used to be that people would write and direct horror to get their foot in the door, right? And if you did horror movies, you were hurting yourself, or you know. And now people go into the film business wanting to do horror specifically. So it's got a whole different vibe to it and a whole different energy coming towards it, and it's very exciting for me.
And we've actually got some questions coming in from the audience now. Chad, this one is for you. Audience question: The Deep Ones is also very funny. Do you think some of the humor came from the cast improv and interactions?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that was one of the like Tim Muscatel's performance. There were so many things that were just on the floor, laughing with the stuff he would come up with. And at first, it kind of messed things up a bit because everything was so serious until the doctor comes to the door, knocks on the door, opens the door, and he was very just serious with it. But then he did, another take that was improvised where he's like, hello, and he was all over the place. But it was so funny on set that I'm like, oh my God, this is great. I love this. The energy, it's just a great thing. So he started doing more and more of that and getting into it. And then in the editing room, it's like, okay, that doesn't work. It's too much. But on set, it was kind of taking his first takes of a more serious thing and working that with just a little bit of his over-the-top stuff and kind of jamming it in the edit where it seemed not as just over-the-top and explosive. Because on set, it was great and it was funny. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. But then when it was cut together, it's like, oh no, that was my fault for having such a good time on set with that character, not really realizing, oh, this is going to be hard to cut together with serious and whatnot. But it ended up working, luckily, in the edit to be able to use some of the more funny things spreckled throughout each different take with the serious ones as well. So it proved the point of getting, hey, get a take that you think you need, and then let an actor get a take that they think they want, and then just do kind of a free for all. And one of those takes might be gold, and the other one might be something that was great on set, but not necessarily great in the editing room.
It looks like the old ones have worked some of their magic and conjured up Richard Band. Hello, Richard. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I found you finally. I kept using the wrong Zoom ID and then came across the new one. So my apologies, but
not necessary. And welcome. Thank you for joining us,
everybody.
And since you have swung in, let's switch gears here momentarily and talk about your score. I loved hearing that theremin kick in over the opening credits. It has been far too long since I have heard a good theremin utilized in a horror score. Tell us about that.
Well, it just seemed appropriate in this particular circumstance with this movie. It's sort of I mean, as we all know, theremin, was used, many years ago in mostly in kooky sci-fi ways. Now, obviously, this is a slightly different usage, and I don't really use it in like a in the way it was used in certain TV shows and all that. But it's such a unique sound. Somehow, I thought it just to have a little bit of it in a couple of places in the score helped the general vibe of it, because it's got a weirdness and a beauty to it as well. And without overdoing it, it's only really in a couple of spots in the film, mainly the main title, and when we get towards the end of the movie, it sort of brings it together. I thought it was appropriate, and plus, this is an 80s stylish type of film, kind of, in a certain way. So it seemed appropriate without being silly. I don't think it's silly. Most of the times I hear experiments, most of the times it does seem silly and out of place. But I think in this case, it doesn't. And also, I use it in a certain way in the party scene, which is a very, very strange scene where you just know all these people are just in some other world or whatever whatever you want to call it. So it kind of reminds us of that. It brings it home. It kind of bookends it. You have it in the beginning. You have it at that center of the movie with that party sequence, and then at the very end, there's a little bit of it there. So, sort of, it helps in that way.
And got some more questions coming in from the audience. Chad, this is another one for you. The film's very knowing in a lot of ways, but it does take its Lovecraft references very seriously. It's the look of Dagon and the Deep One child pretty accurately. Did you have a Lovecraft technical advisor, or did this all come from your own imagination?
All from my imagination, and just trying to be faithful to his works. I didn't want to in any ways mess it up, because you're trying to fill some pretty big shoes with when you touch anything Lovecraft. So it was, and taking things that inspired me, like the monsters in Chud, or humanoids from the deep, things like that kind of came to me, and try to be true to that in an honest homage way, instead of just here it's a schlocky thing or whatever it is, but take it as seriously as possible. And same thing with the humor. What comes out of it comes out again naturally, and I don't think at any time is forced. You may not find it funny, you may not whatever, but the things that came out were natural and worked in with the flow of the film and kind of that sensibility. Kind of, like I'm a huge fan of, Stuart Gordon's work and Reanimator from Beyond and things like that. And all those have a great touch of humor juxtaposed with some really like, wow, scenes. So it's just kind of, you take your influences, whether they be in writings or other films, and then they kind of plant their seed, and you either go with it, or you intentionally pay homage to it, or whatever it might be. But I think those things are always, in my mind, it was, getting a monster that fit Lovecraft and didn't, come off as like, oh, that's not Lovecraft. But I think, if the audience is saying, hey, that's Lovecraft, that's a great compliment right there. So, job accomplished.
And speaking of influences, we got another question from the audience. There's something of Rosemary's Baby about the Deep Ones. Was that a deliberate influence?
Yes, I mean, that was kind of the first thing of the idea of doing a cult film, and also kind of knocking off Rosemary's Baby in the same sense. But instead of, a devil cult, of course, it's, the Lovecraft worshiping cult. But, we even went so far as to, we rented the same Zeiss Super Speed lenses that shot Rosemary's Baby, and used like an 18, a 50, used kind of, because they used the same 3 lenses to shoot the entire film to give it this kind of symmetry throughout. So we followed that same kind of thing while shooting this, the DP, Jeff Billings and I. And, Rosemary's Baby is an amazing movie. So it was just kind of taking elements of that, blending them with Lovecraft, and seeing what happens. And, for the audience to pick it up is a great show.
And speaking of this being a cult film, you've got quite a sizable cast and a lot of them working in conjunction with one another, playing off of one another, doing that improv. Robert and Silvia, what is it like to be working with that many people and kind of working both with a script and with doing some degree of improvisation? What are the sort of challenges and benefits of that?
The benefits of working with a large cast like that. Well, everybody believed in the script, and I think it was really teamwork that got us together. We were all on this on the same page, so to speak, and we all kind of trusted each other. And I think that really we all just trusted each other and supported each other 100%. And as a result of that, we got the performances that that we have, and I think it really served us well.
Well, there's one moment that actually I'm going to disagree with him. There was one moment where he improvised grabbing a bunch of plastic flowers when they come to the door, and he opens up the door and he just hands her those flowers. And because I was improvised, maybe sometimes you might not agree with it. And so we got in a bit of a friction there, because part of the group felt like, no, that doesn't look right. And he felt like, no, this is perfect. So sometimes you get that too. I mean, most of the time it's not like that. Most of the time everybody goes with it. But yeah, there unfortunately was this one moment. So you got a little bit of both.
There's a lot of really evocative images in this, but the one that really stood out to me is this image of a woman holding essentially her own missing poster, and the juxtaposition of those two images, and Kelli as she is now holding this old photo. Where did the idea for that come from? Talk about that, because that just is something that has really stuck in the mind.
Well, it's just, one of those things of, you've got this iconic, horror actress playing this role, and it just kind of thought to me, well, she's got to have a daughter. And then I thought about casting her daughter, and we had a couple different people. And then I just thought, well, seeing we never see the daughter, I'm like, Kelli, how about we just use an old photo of you as your daughter? And she was up for it. And, I think it, like you said, it's one of those things that I love when you see it, because it's like Night of the Comet. And then, it's a great thing, because it's even myself, I was just looking at an old driver's license photo of myself when I first moved to California in '95, and I looked just like a baby. But you don't realize 20 years have gone by. It went by in basically a blink of the eye, and then you're like, oh my God, it's been 20 years. And if you could go back and do the things now, I mean, the amazing things that could be if that thing is. So the idea that her character young and then now older and kind of meld together, and then to me it's just a fantastic thing, especially for fans not only of Kelli but of film that might have seen her in something but might not be a fan, and then is able to go back and rediscover some of her other films. I think it's just a neat thing in all of cinema. It's like if you had, you were watching an Orson Welles film, and he had a picture of a baby, and it was a picture of him as a baby, and you found out that detail, and it would make you want to rewatch that and get, oh wow, that's neat that they were thinking, I guess, in a sense, instead of just saying, hey, let's just cast some little girl to play this or a younger girl to play it. It was not only easier, but I think in the long run, a more interesting, choice in the cinema aspect of it.
And unfortunately, it looks like we're running out of time, but we've got one final question, and that is, do we know when this will be released in the UK?
I'm in talks right now with the distributor. Hopefully something will fall together soon, and with it early next year, hopefully.
Hey, I wish that I could spend another half hour talking with all of you. I've got a whole reel of questions, but
go to the other thing. We could keep going if you're
I think that's all the time we've got, but hey, thanks everybody for coming out. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. switch gears now. Kelly's going to be appearing on the, I believe it's the Scream Queens panel, the Women of Horror.
Women horror, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So if you're tuned into this, please change channels, go watch that. Chad, Richard, Robert, Silvia, thanks to everybody for coming in, and to our viewers, thank you for coming to Grimfest Virtual 2020, and keep enjoying the show.